Cool. Hi there, everyone, and welcome to this week's Facebook webinar. My name is Alan, and today I'm joined by my colleagues Joe and Rich, and we're going to be talking about our experiences teaching English as a foreign language abroad. So just thank you for joining us today and tuning in, and also thank you to those who are watching the recap. So we'll just wait a few moments for everyone to join. In the meantime, it would be great to hear where you're tuning in from and where you'd like to teach English yourself. And of course, if you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section and we'll try and get those answered for you. So a bit about me. My name's Alan. I've worked for the TEFL Org for just over 8 years now. I came straight from my teaching job in Spain into a position in the sales and marketing team. I've taught in a couple of different schools in Spain. I did some one-to-one tuition when I was there as well. And I've also dabbled in some online teaching since I've returned to the UK. Rich, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard. I'm a TEFL advisor here. I've been with the company now for a few months, predominantly working from home. So it's been an interesting experience, but we're managing okay. I came from, I didn't come directly from teaching. I'd been teaching a while prior to this. I first got into TEFL many years ago now, probably for the best part of 12 years ago now. I wanted to go and learn Spanish, and I really wanted to spend some time in Central and South America. So I took my TEFL course, and then I was out in Costa Rica initially, which was absolutely fantastic. It was the time of my life, but eventually I was looking to do something a little bit more substantial, and I had an opportunity to go and join one of the large companies in China. And China was just a shoe that fit. So it was a case of I was only going to stay there for a year, but 8-9 years later, and about 3 different jobs, including universities in Hong Kong, I worked my way back to the UK via Spain, taught in Seville for a little while, which was another fantastic experience. And now I find myself up in Venice, working as a course advisor here.
Cool, that's great. And Joe?
Yeah, I've been involved in TEFL since, oh my goodness, showing my age here, 1993. Yeah, so I'm the co-founder of the TEFL Org, and I've taught in different countries: Greece, France. Done some teaching and teacher training in UK, Ireland, US, and China. Yeah, I've just been in TEFL like all my life, basically. Yeah, so I don't know any different. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, we've already got a couple of comments through. We've got Joe from Devon wanting to teach English online. Yeah, Douglas, that's me from the videos on the course. Yeah. We've got John in London looking to teach English online as well. Joe as well, she's looking to teach in Spain and Portugal. Douglas in Surrey looking to teach English online. And yeah, a lot of you are coming through. Sophie from Georgia, and Will in Maidstone, about a fifth of his way through the level 5 course. Cool. So yeah, keep them coming. If you've got any questions, just feel free to put them in the comment section. So probably best place to start is at the very beginning. So what got us into teaching English and how did we get started in TEFL? If I start with that one, to be honest, it's not something that I really considered until I was in my final year of university. I had just returned from my Erasmus semester in Cordoba in the south of Spain. I studied marketing in Spanish at university, so I had a compulsory semester abroad. So I had just returned and I was in my final year and I was kind of thinking, right, what am I going to do after I've graduated? I need to get a a full-time job. I need to get some money and pay off my student loans. So when I was looking originally at some marketing jobs, a lot of the positions that I was looking at required previous experience, which I obviously didn't have. So that was sort of a dead end for me at that stage. And I was speaking to one of my Spanish lecturers, and I was mentioning that I really enjoyed my time in Spain, and I'd ideally like to go back sometime soon after I graduated to work there. And they recommended looking at the English language assistant program that's run by the British Council. They said it was a really good way to get back into Spain quite easily, practice my Spanish, improve my Spanish, but also get a job which, working as an English language assistant, I didn't really have to work that many hours a week. I was working on a part-time contract, so I had sort of 12 hours in school. So I had the rest of the time there to sort of dedicate to improving my Spanish, finding other work, and yeah, doing a bit of travel as well. A lot of my friends were going overseas to travel for like a gap year. I wish I could do that, but I was in the position where I was working a lot of retail jobs during university. And yeah, I just needed a job just to keep money coming in. So yeah, I applied for the British Council English Language Assistant Programme, and originally I didn't think I was going to get it because they sent me a notice saying that they'd received a lot of applications that year. And then I got invited to an interview down in Glasgow, which I attended. And then about halfway through the summer, about 4 to 6 weeks before I got my place, before I started teaching in Spain, I actually found out that I got offered a job. And when the letter came through, it wasn't an email back then, it was a letter. Not that it was that long ago, it was back in 2010. I got a letter with the placement where I was going to be placed. And the first thing I had to do was Google where the place was, because I had no idea where Cáceres was in Spain. But no, it was really good. I spent 2 years teaching in Spain as an English language assistant. But yeah, no, it was brilliant. And that's pretty much how I got started in TEFL teaching. But yeah, what was it like for you, Rich?
For me, I just completed my degree at Nottingham University, which was in international relations. So one of those degrees that doesn't necessarily mean much, to be honest. It's kind of a very, very broad, ambiguous degree. So I didn't have a clear direction as to what I wanted to do with it. But in my gap year, I had done some, not so much traveling, but I've been to Zambia and done a biodiversity project there for volunteer work. And there we'd actually done a bit of local teaching. And that, I think, is where the first thought came, that the kind of the light bulb moment was a case of, this is something which I can enjoy doing and I can do in different places. I knew that I was going to want to travel, and I didn't really fancy the idea of putting on a backpack and having a round trip around lots of different countries, just kind of touching base. I really wanted to go and fully immerse myself into another culture. And the more I thought along these lines, the more a TEFL qualification seemed to be like the most appropriate way to do it. So I, again, with my, something I touched on earlier is I really wanted to learn Spanish. I've always had a fascination with Latin America, and I noticed that they were running a TEFL program out there, which actually enabled me to go and stay with a home family as well, which I thought would be the best way to improve my non-existent Spanish at the time. It was really challenging at first because I'd arrived in a host family where they didn't speak a word of English, I didn't speak a word of Spanish, and there was lots of kind of funny dancing and mimes and miming to even get your food in the night. But it meant that within only a few weeks, my Spanish was starting to come, on a daily basis, and it really did help. The TEFL course was great. I really enjoyed it. But the problem I found in Costa Rica was particularly where I wasn't keen to move into the central area, into San Jose or the capital. I wanted to stay on the Pacific Ocean, where there weren't that many teaching opportunities. And funnily enough, actually, a lot of the jobs that I did go for, I didn't get because I was British. They wanted American teachers out there, which isn't always the case, but it seemed to be the case of where I was at the time. So I kind of was thinking, well, was this maybe the right decision? I put my CV online, and within, I think, less than a week, I had a call from one of the big companies in China, English First, EF, got in touch. They offered to pay for my flights, pay for my visa, give me accommodation, and I'd never had this kind of an opportunity before. So I kind of thought, well, there's nothing to lose here. So yeah, I took the plunge and went to China. And as I said earlier on, the shoe really fit there. You know, I really enjoyed the work. I found that working for one of the larger companies initially really helped me to develop as a new teacher, because they would give you lots and lots of structure, lots of support, lots of materials, and then you use that as your template to then form your own teaching style. And again, it was just one of those. I think you'll hear the same kind of story within TEFL, as people do tend to put themselves in the right place at the right time, and lots of new doors will open. Within no time, I was promoted to a senior teacher, and just fortuitously, my director of studies was looking to go on to do something else. And so within under 2 years, I was actually working as the director of studies there. So I was recruiting, training new teachers, developing curriculum, going on international conferences to Thailand and the Gobi Desert. And also, I mean, it was one of the times of my life. And that really kind of consolidated everything that I'd been looking to do within TEFL, within one company. I've since then gone on to work for lots of different companies, but one of the best things I think that I did was initially getting involved with quite a large supportive company that really gave me a really good kind of foundation to move on with. So yeah, I mean, that's how a lack of sunshine in England and wanting to learn Spanish, that was why I took my TEFL in the first place. And as I said, I'm here nearly 15 years later now, still working in the industry.
Cool. That's great. And Joe, what about you? How did you get into TEFL?
Well, it's so long ago, it's hard to remember. Yeah, I mean, you know, I've just finished university with a degree in philosophy, which is pretty much useless for anything. And I was working in a tax office. I mean, so tax office in Hull. Yeah, so pretty much anything else was a good thing to do. I mean, I don't think I'd ever really had a calling to be a teacher, to be honest. And the idea of standing up in front of a group of people and talking to them was anathema to me completely.
Yeah, I was the same as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, who would actually volunteer to do that? But you know, on the one hand, you had the tax office in Hull, or you had this job opportunity which I'd heard about in Greece. And that's what it was, you know. So I just took the plunge, even though I was quite scared about it. And I really, you know, living in a foreign country and teaching, I almost didn't go, and but I did. And I tell you what, I mean, it changed my life completely. You know, the thing of, you know, going out of that comfort zone and doing something different. And I stayed there for 6 years. It was a wonderful place to teach. Small mountain town up in the hills of southern Greece, and I learned the ropes, because I mean, at that time in '93 there weren't any TEFL courses as such. You know, these expensive long courses you could go on, which I couldn't afford because I'd just finished university. So I went out without any idea kind of what I was doing. So it started off as a big steep learning curve, and you learn on the job, you really do, and you got a lot of guidance from the school and that sort of thing. But once you can do that, I think you can do anything. And I certainly, within a very short time, found that actually I love teaching. I love being in front of the class. Love the students. Loved everything about it, actually. It's a real sort of work hard, play hard atmosphere, and you just enter full into it, and just accept the different ways of doing things. You accept the different hours, and you just take everything that's thrown at you. And it's a fantastic experience. But it was just at that point, you know, if you are anybody listening, if you're thinking about whether you're going to go abroad and go teaching, just do it. Even if you're wavering, I don't know if I want to go, or this, that, and you make excuses, just do it. absolutely, it will change you. You change your confidence, not not just the thing of teaching, but all the skills that are associated with it. Your outlook will change, and it's just that inner confidence that you get from just doing something, and you're on your own. You have to make it succeed, and it's never look back. That one.
Definitely, yeah, totally agree with that. We've got a couple of questions coming through. We'll just answer some of these and then go on to in terms of qualifications and experience. So we've got one from Angela. She's saying she's 48 years old and wondering how easy this would be for someone her age to teach abroad, looking to move abroad when her daughter is older, and looking for adventure. So yeah, in terms of the inquiries that we get, this is actually quite a common inquiry. We've got students that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s that are looking for a change of career, or once their kids have grown up and sort of flown the nest, they want to sort of go abroad and do something and teach. So yeah, it's definitely doable. I don't think you'll have any problems teaching or finding work teaching English abroad.
They're teachers of all ages, all over the place. China, Europe, absolutely, there are opportunities.
Cool. And we've got one from Freya. What is the best way to memorize grammar?
Don't try. Don't try to memorize it. I must admit, when I first started teaching, I had I wouldn't know. I had no idea what a past participle was when I first stepped into the classroom. Or any of the tenses, and so Joe, tomorrow you're teaching past simple. Past what? Okay. So you go home and you get your grammar book out and you learn everything about the past simple. So by the time you taught it that next day, you're an expert on the past simple. If they ask something about some other grammar points, think that's a very good question, Costas. I'll come back to you tomorrow with that answer. Basically, I survived for the first year on that kind of that way of doing it. But it's absolutely learn by doing. Yeah,
exactly.
I agree with Joe there. I had myself a little, I think it was the Collins Pocket Book of Grammar, I think it was. And because it was pocket, my students didn't know it was with me all the time, so I could just turn to quickly consult it. But the same advice that I gave to any new teacher coming onto our company when we were training was get yourself a good grammar guide. As I said, I did recommend the Collins one because it's the one I use for myself. And the way it explains the grammar rule is very, very simple to understand. And as Joe said, what most teachers do is wing it. It's a winging culture. It's what you do. You wing it until you know it, and then you're an expert. But at first, you just practice it to death the night before, and then and what I always found is display the grammar rule in a logical way that makes sense to you. We're all different. We all see things in different ways, and we arrange how we learn in different ways. But for me, I'm a very visual learner, as I think most people are. So I would make sure that I've got a clear, almost like a mathematical formula on the board for how the grammar works, which isn't to overcomplicate it. It's actually to simplify it. So I always found that if I kind of put a couple of practice demonstrations of a grammar point on the board, and I would just check it with other teachers. Always bounce around other people that you're working with as well. But yeah, grammar, as Joe says, we all go in it with, especially native speakers, because we don't learn grammar in our own schools. So we have to kind of re-educate ourselves with grammar when we start teaching, which kind of actually makes us quite good teachers for it, because it means that it's fresh. We've just learned that point, and we can then teach it onto our students. But once you've done it that one time, then it's in, and then it's just second nature after that. So yeah, there is a little initial winging.
I guess when we started teaching, certainly when I did, there weren't grammar courses. There weren't, there's no way of learning grammar except from a grammar book, which is pretty dry stuff. But yeah, certainly I could have done with some grammar training before I went, but 93, there wasn't any.
Yeah, that's all included in all of our online courses as well. There's a dedicated online grammar module that will take you through all the different rules and terminology as well. But when I was teaching as well, a good place to look for explanations It was YouTube, because there's a lot of video tutorials as well. But yeah, when I first started teaching, I remember going in to my first teaching position. This is before I had, because with the program that I was on, the language assistant program, a TEFL qualification wasn't a requirement. So we were always in class with an English teacher, but we'd always get asked questions. We'd always split students into smaller groups and teach smaller groups to help them with their conversation. And there was this one day that I was going through, and I didn't realize at the time, they were learning the present continuous and the difference between adding the infinitive or the gerund at the end. So they were learning like I like reading, I like walking, I like swimming, that sort of thing. But then when I said, oh, I like to read, the teacher was like, oh no, don't say that. Like, we're just learning this specific structure. Like, don't confuse them.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I learned as well, because I was thinking, oh, this is very simple stuff. But when you're learning the language, you need to be very, very specific in what you're teaching and what you're wanting the student, what the target language is, because you don't want to confuse them. Yeah, so with that, yeah, I really learned that after I did my TEFL training. I did that in the summer between my 2 placements. It was a lot easier to answer those sorts of questions that came up. But yeah, if there wasn't anything, I could always just ask the teacher to explain it. But yeah, that's good. I think we've got a couple more questions here. What's the differences between the 120-hour courses and the longer ones? So really, in terms of training, 120 hours is the minimum. That's what we recommend. That's what most employers look for in applicants. When you get into the longer courses, these normally include those same core modules plus additional modules. So for example, in the 120-hour Premier Online TEFL course, you've got the 5 core modules, but then when you go the next sort of level up to the 140-hour course, for example, that's where you've got the classroom element. So you can either take that in a physical classroom, or you can do that virtually online at the moment. And that's where you get some hands-on teaching practice. So yeah, they all include the same sort of core modules, but then when you go up into the longer courses, that's where you add on sort of additional modules. So it's really just dependent on sort of what you want to do once you finish your TEFL training, if those modules are relevant for what you want to do. Cool. But yeah, getting on to TEFL qualifications, in terms of teaching experience and qualifications, when I first started my teaching position, I didn't have any previous teaching experience. This was the first experience I had standing up in front of a class helping to deliver a lesson. And it was a really steep learning curve, but I really enjoyed it, and I didn't realize how much I learned during the first year. I was lucky enough to work at an adult language school, so all of the learners were age 16 and over. So we had students that were at university, people that worked, and people that were in retirement taking the lessons for fun. And they would have 2 hours, 2 2-hour lessons every week, and there was morning and afternoon sessions available. But yeah, I had a really good experience my first year, because I had so much experience with different ages, also different types, and also learner levels as well. So I taught from very beginner level, from sort of A1, A2 level, up to sort of advanced level C1 as well. So that was a really good chance to sort of practice sort of with all the different levels as well. But yeah, when I came back over the summer, I actually completed the 120-hour TEFL course. That's the combined course option that includes the practical weekend course. And then I actually finished the online modules, the grammar, teaching methodology, and video observation when I was back over in Spain during my second year. And that was really good, because it sort of solidified what I'd already learned in my first year of teaching. but also gave me sort of that confidence as well to sort of look at the lesson plan structure of why we do certain activities in certain ways as well. But yeah, what about you, Rich? You did your course in country?
Yeah, I did mine was actually a really expensive course. It was a 4-week course with some face-to-face teaching as well, which, looking back on it, I really didn't need. I mean, it was good for me because I had a separate agenda, wanting to be in Costa Rica, wanting to learn Spanish as well. So it wasn't, the TEFL certificate wasn't my only objective, but I get the question. It's probably one of the most often questions I get asked is, how does it compare to take an online course versus a face-to-face course? Or, as Alan mentioned before, we're able to actually incorporate face-to-face online as well now. I mean, generally, most employers will look at the two the same. They'll generally look at the accreditation and the quality of the course that's been delivered. And when they're looking for experience, a lot of the time they will actually ask for maybe a year or two experience anyway, if they are looking for experience. So it's only really beneficial to the individual yourself. If you feel that you're going to get some extra benefit from it, then it's worth doing. Mine in Costa Rica was actually, we had to go and teach a class down to the local beauty spa. So it was four Costa Rican ladies that I delivered a class to, and it was good. It went well. Did it really prepare me for my first class of 25 10-year-olds in China? Not really at all, to be honest. All it did was give me an idea about creating lesson plans and the actual process of sitting down with a pen and paper to writing up your post notes after your lesson. It kind of gave me a good idea of that practice, which, from my own experience, when we launched our virtual classroom a few weeks ago, in the wake of the pandemic, I was quite skeptical, to be honest, going into it, because I'm not very good at technology, and I also I'm very much I'm a face-to-face person. I like that human contact. I don't really like to do things online, and I thought it was going to be a bit of a waste of time, to be honest, and I've never been more wrong. It was absolutely fantastic. And in terms of, I'm not just saying this to promote our course, I'm generally trying to compare it to the experience I had in a really expensive face-to-face real teaching class. I learned more on this course because of the quality of the training that we had and the way that the course was delivered, albeit online, than I did going to teach 4 ladies in a spa in Costa Rica. And yet that one, it sells itself as a huge course with all of this teaching practice and teaching experience, but it didn't really help me. So to kind of go back to your point, Alan, I would suggest that it's only beneficial if you really want to get a bit of practice. And if you do, then doing it online and face-to-face really is just the same, to be honest. It just means that you don't have to worry about traveling down to a location to do it. The way that they manage the classes is that they break away rooms into the Zoom aspect, so you can go and do individual group work and kind of look at case studies and then put a lot of theory in before you actually do your class, which I didn't get when I did my full-on teaching experience in Costa Rica. It was a case of, this is who you're going to teach, write a lesson plan for it. So yeah, I mean, it's up to the individual. It is beneficial to get some experience, but I wouldn't say it's absolutely necessary to start teaching, because I think, as Joe touched on the point, you'll get a baptism of fire when you get into a classroom anyway. And after the first class, you're going to feel like, this is fine. There's so much pre-nerves in teaching, and it's all, you kind of build everything up in your head before your first class, and you overkill all of your planning. You spend weeks and weeks planning one class, which within about 3 or 4 weeks you're planning in about 5 minutes.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
It does become much easier after your first class, but I mean, some practice beforehand could be helpful, but it's certainly not essential.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it's amazing how much time you spend on planning the first lessons, and then after a couple of years of teaching, you think, what I've got tomorrow, I got that. I'll press a continuous. Okay, go through your files. Yeah, put it out on the photocopier. A little bit of adjustment, and it's like you get so quick at it. But I must say, I didn't like you, Alan. I taught first and then got qualified. I think I taught in Greece for 3 years, and I took a year off from living abroad to come back to the UK, and I took like you, Rich, I took the longer course, the 4-week full-time course, because pretty much that was all was on offer. But that's because I wanted to get into training in the UK, and then I went back to Greece. But Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't needed in those sort of times. But things have changed. You know, that was Greece before it was part of Europe, and China's certainly changed in what their demands are. You know, 20 years ago, you could just walk into China and get a job, or many other countries like Thailand. But the visa restrictions have really tightened up now. So getting qualified is absolutely, it's your ticket. You know, ticket to get the visa. So it has changed, certainly since my day. But yeah, you know, don't worry about not knowing grammar. You'll learn it on the job. If you've got an awareness from the grammar course, basically what that gives you is that grammar's out there. You might not know it really intimately, but you know what it is that you need to know. And you will know that the night before when you're planning your present continuous lesson.
Yeah.
It is, but once you've taught it, it sticks in your head. It really does. Certainly, that's what I found.
Definitely, yeah.
And especially with the... it feels great. It feels really good when you get it as well, and then you really love to tell everybody else about it.
Yeah, it is. Oh, that's how it works.
And especially now with like the move to sort of like online teaching as well, if you take your training online as well, you sort of know what systems and what software is available. So for example, with our virtual classroom courses and our online teaching practice course as well, that's actually conducted over Zoom, and those are platforms that you will be using when you're teaching. So getting to grips with how to share your screen, share documents, use the interactive whiteboard, use breakout rooms, that sort of stuff, that is used in the training, but also comes in handy because that's also something that you're going to be using when you actually come to teach English online as well.
And also because I mean, the fact that you have to prepare a structured lesson and deliver a structured lesson, doesn't matter if it's on Zoom or in the classroom. You know, that process is the same. You know, so it's really, it was really good experience actually.
We've got a question from John Clark saying, once you have gained your TEFL qualification, can you take additional modules at a later date?
Yep.
So yeah, definitely. So once you've got your initial TEFL training, you can sign up for maybe one of the advanced courses. We've got advanced courses on teaching business English, teaching young learners, and teaching English online that goes into greater depth on not only how to plan, prepare, and deliver sort of lessons for online teaching, but also how to set up your own teaching website, how to sort of market yourself as an online teacher. Got a question from Sophie. What does it
mean to be a good teacher?
Yeah.
Yeah. I must admit, when I do the classroom courses, when I've done teacher training, we look at what makes a good teacher, and there's loads of things, you know, a whole list of things that you could put as qualities that make a good teacher. But I think I've nailed it down to one thing, and that's attitude, the teacher's attitude and the teacher's motivation. Because you can learn skills and techniques and all that sort of thing, but if the teacher's motivated and got the right attitude, that permeates everything you do, from the lesson planning to the delivery. It even goes out to the students. And if you've got passion, you will be a good teacher. I think that sums it up for me.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with Joe there completely. I mean, I've worked in a range of different schools, where some of the schools I've been working with brand new teachers who have only just got their TEFL. They don't have a degree, for example, and I've worked in a university in Hong Kong where I should have had a PhD to work there. It was a time and a place situation that I got that job. But the point I was going to make with the teachers or the professors that I was working with in the university, who all had PhDs, masters, doctorates, none of them compared to any of the teachers that I've worked with in some of the training schools who had, I think another thing that's really important is personality. You've really got to have a good personality to be a good teacher, because as Joe says, that permeates everything around you, your students, your co-workers, the local staff as well, who you need to also be, be in consideration of. And I think that some of the best teachers that I've ever worked with have been teachers who don't even have a university degree. You know, I mean, as Joe said, it's a little bit different now. The paradigm is slightly adjusted where you do kind of need those things in a lot more places now. But the point I'm making is it does not make you a better teacher to have had a full education at all. I think if you've got, definitely if your attitude, as Joe said, is spot on, but also if you've got some life experience, you've got some personality to bring, humor is something which is very important in teaching. Not the case of being a clown, but being able to, you know, laugh at yourself even, you know, because teachers do make mistakes. And I find that a lot of the teachers who take themselves far too seriously don't really develop into great teachers. I think that being relaxed and I think, as Joe said, with the attitude, I think you have to go into TEFL. I think Joe mentioned it earlier on as well, with an open mind. You've got to be flexible. You've got to be open-minded. I mean, I remember as a director in China, I would have some teachers coming to me complaining that the paint color on the wall of the apartment we'd given them was wrong. Now, if that's the way that you think about things and that's the way that you think about life, you're going to struggle in TEFL.
Yeah.
Because you need to be, you know, accepting to what's around. You need to be very versatile. You need to understand.
My bedroom used to flood when it rained.
Yeah. Oh, I don't have a toilet. Wasn't I supposed to have a toilet on my contract, for example? So, yeah. And if you're able to go in there with a very kind of elastic approach on things and be able to be, you know, to as I said, come into it with an open mind, you'll love it and you'll do well. If you're very kind of set in your ways and you're very particular about a lot of things, then you might really want to consider where you go particularly. But if you can immerse yourself and you can be open-minded, it's literally I couldn't recommend this lifestyle highly enough. It's fantastic, but you need to have
it's like the second point to teaching abroad, isn't it? It's not just the teaching, it's actually living abroad.
Yes, yeah.
And that's just as hard, you know, sometimes. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, for me, I thought it was like when I got into teaching, or when I was thinking of getting into teaching English, I thought I had to be this sort of extrovert and be like, have the confidence to stand up and speak in front of everyone. But what I really learned was it wasn't really like that sort of focus was on me, but it should have been, the focus is on the student. So you have to sort of, because it's for their, it's for them to learn English. So you don't want to be at the front of the class talking for hours on end. That's really boring. Like, it needs to be focused on them, with them talking for the majority of the time, because those 2 hours or an hour every week, that's maybe the only sort of time that they've got to practice their English. So there's no point you standing up and talking at them, because they can just watch a video or watch TV or something. Get them to sort of practice themselves, and then it's sort of just to get them to speak and stuff like that and practice using their English. That's the sort of best thing that I find, just to sort of be quiet and not sort of try and talk as much. Megan, is there a process of placing teachers with specific age groups, or can you choose the age you want to teach in terms of teaching children?
Sorry, I shouldn't giggle at that one. It's just that's again one of the first requests we'll get from these type of teachers. Again, there are those type of teachers that will turn up and say, "Give me whatever, let's just get on with it." And there are those type of teachers that will turn up and say, "I'm only going to do this. I'm only interested in doing that." And that's again part of the mindset which will hinder you within TEFL. Is if you do have a very restrictive mindset and you only want to do X, Y, or Z, you will struggle. You need to be quite open to what you're going to do. I mean, the amount of teachers that come to me and say, "I only want to teach adults," because they don't want to deal with classroom management, but then they'll get a class full of beginner adults who can't string a sentence together, and then you see the teacher next door with a load of 6-year-olds having worlds of fun and games going on, and then they quickly adjust. So again, it's back to just being open-minded, I think.
It's a good point, actually, and the classroom management actually changes. You can have a class of adults who've just had lunch and want to sleep. That's all they want to do. And you've got other ones that want to talk to business English in France. The French government have a thing where you have to spend, companies have to spend 2% of their revenue on training. So they really just want to spend this money, and so you'll have people on in your classroom who just don't need to be there, don't want to be there. And that's a lot harder than a group of, 15 to 20, 12-year-olds. It's a different dynamic. They all have their pluses and minuses. I wouldn't say teaching one or not the other. And they're all different challenges, different experiences. And I guess it's, if you haven't taught before, you're kind of trying to imagine, oh, it must be easier to teach adults, or it must be easier to teach children, depending on how confident you feel. But I would just say, just go for it, experience it all, and then make a decision. Then at least you're making those sort of choices with some sort of, experience.
Yeah, that's what I felt when I first started teaching. My first job was teaching adult learners, so I thought, oh, this is going to be a lot easier than teaching children. I just didn't like the idea of teaching children. I thought they'd be really difficult to sort of manage, like all these screaming kids. Like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to control them all? But when I started teaching adults, and also their motivation's different as well. Like with adult learners, they want to be in class, so they'll have tons and tons of questions about, oh, so this is this topic, or this is this grammar point, so why is it like this? And so there lots of like why for every explanation that you give. You had about 5 whys after it. And then with my second year, I was teaching in a secondary school. I was teaching 11 and 12-year-olds predominantly, and I had a few classes of 15 and 16-year-olds. But it was to get them sort of motivated as well. But it was also, during the time of the day, because their classes ran from 8 till 2 in the afternoon, and then there was a break for lunch, and then some of them would go off to additional English lessons. So in the class, you'd have some students that had like a really good level of English to be in that class, and others that had sort of a lower level. So it was to get them all sort of excited about learning. So it was lots of songs and games and stuff like that, just to get them sort of involved in it. But when it comes to applying for jobs, normally on the job description, it will state if the school has a particular age group. So you can find language academies that cater specifically to adult learners, or ones specifically that cater to sort of kindergarten, young learners, or teenagers, like after school clubs. So it's definitely worth researching if you want to go for a specific age group. You can only find that information will be on the job advertisement. We've got another question from John Clark. How did you feel when you delivered your first ever class? Were you nervous? Definitely.
Do you know what? Imagine this. Okay, I arrived at the bus station in this small town, mountain town in Greece. I went to the school, suitcases, and they said, "Oh, Joe, welcome." And can you just go into that class and teach them? I was like, what? What? I had no idea what I was doing. And if you ever can imagine this person who didn't want to stand up in front of people in any case, really, really nervous. And I was physically shaking. My legs, I thought, were about to give way at any point. And have you ever been in a situation where your palms actually sweat?
Yeah.
I mean, what is that about? And I couldn't pour enough water down my throat fast enough, because it was just drying out. It was awful. But it got better. that was the bottom line. But I hadn't any preparation. I didn't, nothing planned at all. And so yeah, that was pretty bad. I don't put people off. I haven't put anyone off. No. But but it was basically, if I can do it, then anyone can. And it's and it just got better because I planned and prepared lessons after that, and it was fine. But but great. It soon got better, and it was great.
Mine was a little bit different in that my first class in Costa Rica, I'd been told I was going to have 8 students. So again, as we spoke about earlier, overkill, planned it to death. I could have probably talked for about a day with the amount of materials that I had for this 40-minute class. But everything I'd had prepared was for pairs, because we had an even number. It was going to be, this is a pair, this is a pair, this is a pair. And what happens? There aren't the right amount of students there. There weren't 8 in the class, there were 5 in the class. So me being what most teachers would do, I went straight to my director of studies with my lesson plan, not effing and blinding, but a little bit upset that I've heard all of this. You told me there's going to be 8, there's only 5. What am I going to do? You've still got to teach them, so just adapt it. So how am I going to adapt it? The numbers don't work. So, that first class wasn't a disaster. I had to put them into, one group became a 3. There was a 3 and a 2, basically. But then what that taught me for the rest of my TEFL career is be flexible with your lesson plan. Have a plan B. Make sure it can work for even numbers, odd numbers. There are a lot of what ifs with teaching, especially when you're teaching abroad and where maybe the student numbers or the student levels aren't always perfectly structured and things aren't always ideal. Again, it goes back to that point I keep making about having the type of personality that will serve you well or hinder you in TEFL. And that's if it's a case of, oh, well, I can't do it now, which some teachers would, this is not what you've said it was going to be. I'm not going to teach that class, and they kick off, but ultimately the class still has to get taught. And so you just need to be flexible, and you need to have a not necessarily a plan B, but make sure that your lesson plan is flexible and can be adapted if it needs to be. And that's what that taught me. So after the first class, it was a case of, well, it could have been a disaster. I came out of that class. The kids still had a good time. We played some good played some good games. I still feel that they used a lot of English, and it might not have been the exact plan that I had on paper, but we still had a good time and still used lots of English. And then it served me for then my next lesson plan was, right, okay, if it's not an even number, what would I do with this activity, or what would I do with that activity? So it helps you,
Yeah, absolutely right. Agree.
Cool. So I'm just aware of time. We've just got about 15 minutes left. So we'll just go through the last section and then just go through some of the other questions that have come through. Well, we talk about our sort of best teaching job and experience. Joe, do you want to go first? Or
they're all different. They're all different. I mean, I love Greece because I spent 6 years in Greece, and that was my real learning curve. And I guess it was because the kids were friendly, and you would meet the families, and you get invited around to weddings and barbecues, and you became, part of that community. I mean, leaving Greece after 6 years was so difficult. And even now, I still got my bouzouki, and I love Greece, and it's it hasn't left. I guess I've taught in China, I've taught Chinese kids and French adults, and they're all different. They all have their pluses and minuses. But for me, it's the first place I went to is Greece, and where I cut my teeth in teaching. And yeah, it's where my heart is. I'm still Facebook friends with loads of students, and a tear comes to my eye when I think of it. Yeah, no, it's Greece. The whole 6 years was just fantastic.
Cool. For me, I'd probably have to say the same as well. My first teaching position in Cáceres was sort of the most memorable. I really enjoyed teaching at a secondary school my second year, but I think just that initial first year teaching abroad, sort of going it alone, and also I didn't realize at the time how sort of big the area was. Not until I went to a very, very small fishing village in the north of Galicia for my second teaching post. But for my first year, I didn't realize I'd be walking down the street and everyone would know who I was. Like, I was like not a local celebrity, but everyone knew, like, oh, there's that teacher from Scotland that's arrived. So everyone, like, when I go shopping or when I go to like a cafe or a restaurant, they'd know who I was and where I worked. They knew my backstory already. And that's how I got a lot of my private tuition classes as well. After a few months of working at the school, it was, oh, my sister's friend needs lessons, or my son needs lessons, or the local pharmacist as well. So I had about, as well as my 12 hours teaching in the school, I had, which was really great as well, because the way that my timetable worked out, I had classes from Monday afternoon up until Thursday afternoon. So I could travel, like take long weekend breaks pretty much every weekend if I wanted to. And in Spain as well, they have really long bank holiday weekends as well, puentes. So yeah, it was a really great time to go and explore around the area. But yeah, I got a lot of people that I've kept in touch with from my first year, and a lot of the students were one-to-one. So I'm still in touch with the pharmacist and some of the high school students that have now actually graduated university and started working now. But yeah, I think that was my best sort of TEFL experience, and also seeing. Although in saying that, in my second year, when I was at the secondary school, they were going on a school trip to London. And when they came back, they were all excited about what they'd done in London, and we're all discussing, oh, what did you do? What did you see? That sort of thing. And just the confidence that they had, like, oh, I could do this. I ordered this. I bought tickets for us. We went here, we went there. It was really good. The thing that they couldn't get over in London, and they had like laughed about it for weeks after they came back, was the Mind the Gap announcement on the London Underground. They just thought it was very funny. They just didn't. They're like, what does it mean? Mind the gap, mind the, in this British accent as well. It's just very funny because it's obviously different from my accent. What about you, Rich? What was your best experience?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, most of my time was spent in China, and I think when I taught in the university in Hong Kong, that was that was certainly the pinnacle, I think, of my teaching career in terms of prestige, salary, level of students. I mean, that was absolutely fantastic. It was, these students were economics majors, so they were, geniuses. It's like coming on my board would look like Goodwill Hunting. It was all of that up on the board. So these guys were probably cleverer than I am. In fact, they're definitely cleverer than I was. But the fact that we got to discuss things like the migrant crisis, international politics with Chinese people was absolutely fantastic, because with such different mindsets, but talking about something which we're now all interested in together. So that was really cool. But I think kind of on the point that you made, Alan, I used to teach in a town in Spain called Marchena, which is just outside of Seville. So it's a lovely Andalusian town, but very, very small, no expats living there. And it was kind of the same. It's, oh, there's that London teacher, there's that guy from London. And it was at the end of my first B2 or B1 adult class. I had no friends there. I didn't know a single person. I'd been there for about a week. And I just sort of said to a few of the students, it was a Friday night. Where are you guys? It's Spain. Everybody goes out quite late. Where are you guys going? They said, oh, we're all going to the bar. Do you want to come? So I said, yeah, sounds good. And then, that was then our thing, because they, I made the point of, certainly for me, when I've learned Chinese or when I've learned Spanish, the best way to learn it is to go and have a beer with the locals, because your inhibition, you might be talking absolute garbage, but you're using the language, without thinking about it too much. And I kind of, without telling my students that alcohol is the way to learn, I wasn't trying to necessarily promote that. I sort of say that, after you've had an English class, it's a great idea to all go to the bar and consolidate what you've been doing over a drink in English, which to this day, I'm still friends with a lot of them now. That then, resulted in me getting offered to go to their houses, their campos, to the beach with them. And actually, I was able to form my own friendship group and community through my adult students. So, yeah, I think Spain was the best for me, because they were just so friendly out there.
Cool. So yeah, just before we finish up, we've got a couple of more questions that have come through. So we've got one from Hannah. She's from Newcastle. She's saying, do you know how easy it is for couples to find placements in Asia?
It's common. When I was employing teachers, if we had two teachers, which both had the qualifications necessary and both were keen, then generally they would be desirable. However, if you've been bitten by a couple before and you lose two teachers for the price of one, it can go against the school in terms of employment. So it is a little bit of a risk when a school takes on a couple. But generally speaking, I think you'll find that most schools will be quite interested to speak to you and will be quite happy to take you on as a couple.
And they often provide accommodation as well, don't they, for couples? Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a couple of student stories over on our blog actually about couples that have gone abroad to teach. I think there's a couple that have gone over to teach in Thailand after completing the course with us, and they didn't have a problem finding work overseas. You've also got the option of, if you you don't have to necessarily work for the same school. You could be placed in the same city or town. Most will have more than one language school, so you might not necessarily want to work together, but you want to live together. So that's also a good option as well.
It's probably sensible advice, actually.
Here's a question from Angela Mary. Are there any short-term jobs for TEFL teachers in Europe? Yes.
There used to be there in Spain.
Yeah, normally you can find it's more common over sort of from Easter onwards. You normally get sort of short language school, language camps and summer schools that run short school placements over maybe sort of a 2-week period or over a month period. But yeah, they're normally quite common in Western Europe. So you've got Spain, Italy. But yeah, they normally get advertised, maybe not this summer, but next summer going forward, yeah, it might be a good option.
Yeah, often there's like little English camp tour guides as well, where you can pick up, a couple of weeks' work, maybe just touring a group from a couple of UK cities sometimes. I know my friend has done that before in the past, but again, I don't know if the contract would be longer and you just work in shorter periods. But there is the option of kind of being an accompanied host for students when they come to countries to get some reimbursement as well.
And there's a question from Natalie May. Are there communities or groups for English teachers whilst abroad? Is it easy to meet others who are doing the same?
Yes. They do congregate, actually. I mean, even when I go to Beijing on business, I always meet up with English teachers in Beijing. Even though I'm not living there, I know where they are, basically. But yeah, certainly living in Greece and in France, there are other teachers at the school, or if you're in a small town, you just meet up with them. Yeah, and you've got the kind of community thing going on, and is that the same for you guys?
Yeah, Spain was the only exception for me, because we were the first language school in that tiny little town. But since I've left, there are now 3 in that town. So but everywhere else, as Joe says, the expats won't be hard to find. They all tend to congregate in the same, but we've all got the same interest. So yeah, you will find wherever you go, you'll have a group of people who have a lot in common with you as well. So yeah, you'll make some great friends with TEFL, that's for sure.
Yeah, the language school that I worked at, it was about a 50-50 split of teachers from England and teachers from Spain. When I first actually arrived, the level of English of the director of studies was like, I didn't realize that she was Spanish. I thought she came from England because she didn't have an accent. The ability that I thought it was amazing how she could instantly switch from English to Spanish. And she knew all the sort of idioms and stuff like that, just immediately knew how to translate them. I was just in awe. And then when she said, I come from a small town up in the north of Spain, I was just like, wow, that's amazing. But yeah, in terms of like meeting other teachers, I met teachers at school, but also with the placement that I was on as well. There was a lot of us that went out at the same time. So I was actually amazed at the amount of people, because it was a British Council programme, but there was also a Fulbright programme, which is for people from the United States that came over at the same time. And there was lots of Americans as well. So there was tons and tons of people that wanted to meet up, either to live together or to travel on weekends together as well, just to do a bit of sightseeing when they were outside of work, but also to meet up for like drinks and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's it, everyone. So yeah, thanks again for tuning in. If we haven't answered your question today, we'll be on afterwards in the next hour or so, just covering and going through all of your questions afterwards. But yeah, thanks again. We'll be back next week at 1 p.m. where we're going to be talking about online teaching and where to advertise as online teacher. But thanks everyone, and have a good weekend.
Cheers everybody.